Okay, so I'm waiting in line here to pick up my grandchild from school, and I thought I'd take a moment to talk a little bit about Yosef. Going back to how he so valiantly protected his mom by standing in front of her, and the sages say it was to protect her or to shield her from Uncle Esav's eyes. And I thought to myself, how much of a shield could a 6 or so year old child provide? And you know, the thought came was that he must have been a very beautiful child to begin with. Very beautiful child that drew the attention away from his beautiful mother. Anyways, in this week's Parashat Vayeshev, the central figure of the Parasha is none other than Yosef. We see him at 17 years old. He was not having a good time with his brothers. They weren't getting along. They disliked him. They resented him. They hated him, really. And then his father favored him. His father obviously doted on him, and for obvious reasons, and then put him in the leadership role by giving him that ornamental garment, that the robe or the mantle, which that represented the mantle of leadership. That's what it was all about. And they hated him even more, but then they hated him. The Torah tells us that they hated him even more because of his dreams. So the term Banu Vayosifu Od Snow. Banu Vayasifu Od Snow. They hated him yet no more. No, I want you to look at the word Vayosifu. Vayosifu has his name in it. It is it has the word exactly Yosef in it. And you know, it's from the root Yasaf, I believe. And what it means is like to add, to increase, to gather. You know, it has the idea of repatriating or, you know, reconnecting and gathering together. So I thought that was interesting, but the Torah does not do anything by accident. It's not random. It's not by coincidence. So this is to teach us that Yosef, if there was one word to describe him, was extra or double. Okay? Everything about his life would be extra or double, you know? His beauty, extra. The Torah tells us in this parasha that he was beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. Okay? And some translation says he was handsome and well built. So he had it going on. He was beautiful all the time. Everything about him was beautiful. Everything about him was beautiful. Why did his brother hate him in the first place? Well, he was dad's favorite, but he would tattletale on them, you know. He bring home evil reports, bad reports. And this stood out to me because in last week's parasha we noticed, and I mentioned that Yaakov never said a bad word about his evil brother or against his evil brother. Never said a bad word. Okay? And not only that, Yaakov really emphasized when he sent his servants to take the gifts to Esav, he emphasized my brother. When you come to my brother. And you get the feeling that that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to evoke those feelings of brotherhood. And this is something that Yosef should have been doing with his brothers by engendering and, you know, evoking and building that those feelings of brotherhood. And he failed So he wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect. He had flaws. But on the outside, he was so beautiful. So to talk more about his beauty, when he got to Egypt and he was sold to Potiphar, a man who wore many hats, chief steward, all kinds of hats he was wearing. But there was one thing that our sages told us, that when Potiphar saw Yosef, this beautiful boy, he fell in love with him, and he went and had surgery done on himself. He actually removed his genitals so that he could become Joseph's wife. Now, keep in mind that Potiphar was married to what they said was like one of the most beautiful women in the world, and she wasn't being taken care of. He wasn't taking care of her at all, and so we can understand a little bit of her plight when she was always harassing and begging Yosef to be with her. Not that there's any excuse for that sort of behavior, but we don't need to be so harsh on her after we understand the situation. So now you're gonna ask, where in the Torah did it say that Potiphar tried to make himself a woman? The Torah does not explicitly say so, but the Torah calls him a Sris. Okay? And a Sris is usually translated as an official, but it also has another meaning. And that meaning is eunuch. So, is it possible that the Torah was telling us that Potiphar had made himself a eunuch, had become a eunuch? All right, food for thought. The other thing was that we came across a character by the name of Potiphera. Now, Potiphera, I imagine, would be the feminine of Potiphar. Okay, so either Potiphera was the wife of Potiphar, or the Torah was telling us something about Potiphar, that he had feminized himself, or tried to feminize himself. Wow. So, there you have it. And it goes back to how handsome and how beautiful Yosef was. Everybody wanted him. Men and women alike wanted him. Okay? He was not having the time of his life there. Okay? He was not. It was terrible. Everywhere you looked. Okay? So, the wife of Potiphar, I explained, was a very beautiful woman, and very beautiful woman, one of the most beautiful women in the world, and she was having a hard time. She was making herself sick because of her desire for Yosef, and the Midrash tells us that the women of the city came to visit her. They wanted to see why she was going crazy. And they served them oranges, and each of them had a knife to peel their orange. And when Yosef came out, they got so distracted looking at him, they were cutting their hands, they're cutting their fingers, and didn't even feel the pain, because they were so taken in by his tremendous beauty. by his handsomeness. Everything about him was fine. Okay? So, that is it's a blessing and it's a curse. You know? He did not have a good time, especially when he started to try to dress up the Egyptian way. You know, paint his eyes, curl his hair, and so on. So, but anyways, it's back to the extra. Back to that double. Everything about Yosef was double. Whether he, whether in punishment, whether in suffering, it's double. Whether in beauty, it's double. Whether in prosperity, it's double. Everything is double. The good, the bad, everything. You know? And so he had to go to the dungeon. He had to go to the place where nobody is going to be looking at him. Right? And so that he would be able to find himself again. He would be able to find himself. And in that dungeon, he was known as the Ivri. The Ivri. The Hebrew. And what does Hebrew mean? It means someone that's standing on one side and everybody else is on the other side. So he had to rediscover himself. Who he was, where he came from, and what his purpose is. So, the outside, fail. You know, anything on the outside will fail. Right? The good looks fade. Right?